Hey, friend, welcome back to Hey Wait. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm glad you found us, and it's really good to be here with you. I'm Jay, and this is the first solo episode of season 2. And now that I've kind of blindly bushwhacked my way through the tall grass of season 1, I can now look back and see the path that I created, and it's clear, and it makes it easier for me to be able to speak about what Hey Wait is all about. So I want to start there as a way of orienting us to this episode and to the season. So I made Hey Wait for all of you out there who lose yourselves around other people, who disappear when you're in connection with someone else, who suffer your own discomfort so that someone else can be comfortable. And you do this because you really, really care about people and you really value having connection that's real and intimate in your life. And sadly, maybe you just have never really been taught how to stay connected to yourself while being connected with someone else. So I made this podcast as a resource for you. I have on guests that can speak to experiences that are going to resonate with you and share tools that are going to help you. And I share tools in these solo podcasts and stories from my coaching with clients and from my own life. And the main tool that this whole thing is built around is, hey, wait, those two words. And so if you listen to the first episode ever, you know what that tool is all about and where it came from and why it's so important to use. But for today's purposes, I'll give you the gist of it. Hey, wait are the two words you use to kind of press reset in a situation so that you can like bring your orientation back to yourself. It's the pushing pause in situations where you feel like you've lost yourself so that you can reorient and come back to who you are in that moment and what you need. So you can say the words, hey, wait, to yourself. And that might sound like, hey, wait, what do I need right now? Hey, wait, how do I feel? Hey, wait, I've been stuck in my head all morning. I have got to move my body. So you can see that it's an interrupt, because if your default pattern, as I'm assuming it might be, is to be in your head a lot or to be kind of what I would call like vaporous in your body, where it's like you don't even notice you have a body. You're just energy making shit happen, or you're used to orienting to everything and everyone around you. Saying, hey, wait to yourself is the way that throughout your day you can interrupt that default and come back to your own embodiment and have some chance of being a good companion to yourself and being able to respond to your own needs and speak your own truths. With that, you can also say, hey, wait to someone else. And this is what you would say when you feel like you're being steamrolled in a conversation. You might say, hey, wait, I actually have something I'd like to share here too. Or when you feel like a conversation has gone off the rails, you might say, hey, wait, I was under the impression that we were here to talk about the budget. Can we stay on that topic? Or you might say it when you aren't feeling considered by someone else. Hey, wait, it doesn't feel good to me when you have your phone out and you're looking at it while we're having a conversation. And I was talking this morning with a client and she was laughing about how there are people out there in this world who naturally can can do that. They don't even necessarily have to say, hey, wait, because they know how to stay with themselves and how to kind of track their own needs and prioritize their own experience, even when they're around other people. And I was like, isn't that amazing? Like, I marvel at the fact that that comes naturally to some people because it absolutely does not come natural to me. And I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, it probably doesn't come naturally to you. So, you remember that commercial from back in the 80s where there was that guy who said, I'm not just the president of the hair club for men, I'm also a member. Well, I am not just the president of the Hey Weight Club, I am also a charter member. The reason why I do all the work that I do when it comes to coaching people and the writing that I've done and now this podcast is because I am in that camp of people who really find it difficult to stay connected to myself while staying connected to another person. Because for my whole life, the two things that have felt the most important to me are depth of connection with other people and authenticity. And I didn't know how to do both of those things at once. So if the point of this podcast was to is to be a resource for people who easily lose themselves around other people and who second guess their own knowing and who stuff their own preferences and who disconnect from themselves to stay connected to others, then it stands to reason that my primary goal, both intrinsically and extrinsically, should be to do it in a way that I feel connected to myself and that you can feel connected to me. When I can orient to feeling connection is the most important piece. I I find that I can access a part of me who trusts that what comes through is quote unquote right. Because this is an inquiry that maybe I'll save for another solo podcast later on. I've really been trying to parse out what do I mean by right when I'm looking for the right answer to something or the right way to do a podcast or the right um, thing to say to someone else in a hard situation. I think what I'm really saying is I'm looking for the way to do it that feels resonant in myself and resonant between me and that person. Like, I don't quite know how to say it other than where it feels like when you hit an actual chord on a guitar as opposed to a discordant mixture of strings at the same time. So that's a long-winded way of saying that this is what this podcast is about. And there is a reason why it's hard for me and why that kind of resonance might be hard for you too. And it isn't because of our personalities, it's because of our nervous systems. So, I want to talk to you a little bit today about the fawn stress response. So, you've probably heard of the three main stress responses: fight, flight, and freeze. So, fight is when you feel like your life is in danger, whether real or perceived, and your nervous system activates to prepare you to fight. Now, we know that's not typically being chased by tigers anymore or truly feeling like your life is in danger. It could be that your email inbox is super, super full, and that sets off this fight response in you where you get pissy and your heart rate increases and your breath rate increases and you feel like world is against you and that other people are somehow your enemies and that the only way to really get through the onslaught of emails is to you know, jam out your answers really fast and be annoyed. Flight is same sort of thing. It's when your nervous system senses that you're in danger, whether real or perceived, but instead of fighting, you want to escape the thing that's triggering you. So in the case of the email inbox, for example, flight might look like just ignoring them, pretending like they're not there, letting them pile up more and more and more, and just avoiding. So, flight can be literally running away from something, but it can also be figuratively running away from something by not being willing to have a conversation, by avoiding someone. Oh my gosh, how many of you ever seen someone that you know you have to have a hard conversation with across the room from you at work and been like, "Whoop," going the other way, right? So that's the way flight would show up. And then freeze is a little bit different physiologically in your body. Freeze happens when you feel like your life is actually threatened, or when you have been in that activated place of fight or flight for so long that you finally collapse. Because freeze is a collapse response, it's a shutdown response. It's what we think of when we think of a possum playing dead. But the way that shows up in our relationships is it looks like you getting foggy headed. It just feels like your brain has become off limit to you. It feels like being numb inside, where you just stop feeling the emotions or the stress that you have been so overwhelmed by. I think of the freeze response as wanting to stay in your sweatpants all day and eat junk food and watch Netflix, right? It's just like you're done with the world. So that's fight, flight, freeze. Now, the fourth stress response that is less commonly known is called fawn. And fawn is super, super interesting. A psychotherapist named Pete Walker came up with this term, and he wrote about it in his book called Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving. And in it, he defined fawn, and in it, he defined fawning as responding to a threat by becoming more appealing to the threat. Now, that might sound a little bit strange. What it means is this is about trying to maintain connection at all costs. The fawn response really is a very social survival strategy. It happens especially in relational contexts. So let's say in that example I was giving earlier about your boss throwing you under the bus in front of your team. In the moment that happens, you're probably going to get a rush of anger. Like, what the fuck, dude? Are you really doing this again? But to speak in that way would be to be in the fight response. And if part of you knows that fight response isn't going to be appropriate here, it's going to get me fired, and then I'm not going to have a paycheck, and then I'm not going to be able to pay my bills, right? So you shut down the fight response and you keep going along with the conversation, or you maybe even laugh at the joke that he made at your own expense, right? That's you responding to the threat of your boss shit-talking you by becoming more appealing to the threat by laughing along. Isn't that so funny that you just made me feel like crap? So one of the things to understand about the fawn response is it comes out when fight or flight don't feel safe enough to do. So, for example, a time when flight might not feel safe enough would be if you're in a marriage where you don't feel considered or respected, you don't feel emotionally safe, but you don't want to leave it because you don't want to have your children split their time between you and your spouse. So you make things work. You go along to get along. You stuff a lot of your feelings, and you try to be such a good spouse to try and get the other person to be a better spouse rather than leaving. So when fight or flight don't feel possible or safe, fawn is your stress response of choice. And the really interesting thing about fawning is that it is both a mobilizing and an immobilizing stress response. So what I mean by that is fight and flight, your nervous system mobilizes to be able to do those two things. And your heart rate speeding up, your breath rate speeding up, right? You feel more revved up, like you're just ready. Freeze is when your nervous system goes into an immobilized state where you're numb and you kind of are disconnected from the world and from yourself. So a fawn response has both of those characteristics, because when you're in the actual moment of trying to become appealing to the threat by doing the people pleasing, doing the thing of showing them, look how shiny and great I am, that's an active energy. It's that over functioning, let me be everything you need me to be, let me make sure that you're comfortable. It's a lot of action. But on the inside, is where you're immobilized. On the inside is where you're numb. You're numb to yourself. You're numb to your needs. You're numb to your preferences. You're numb to your emotions. Is this sounding familiar? This is why sometimes people will say when their stress response is fawning, that it feels like they have their metaphorical foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. Now, the thing I want to make really, really clear about the fawn response is that it is not a personality flaw. It is not a choice that you're making. It's not that you have low self-esteem. It's not that you are trying to manipulate people. This is a survival response that is embedded in your nervous system. You do not have a choice over this. This is you trying to find power in situations where you feel powerless. And I really want you to take that in because this is why I think nervous system work is so, so important in understanding the nervous system, because it really does take the stigma and the judgment out of the behaviors that you have that you probably judge yourself for. This is not a choice if you're fawning self-safe. And the thing about fawning is you might be listening to this and being like, yeah, this is absolutely what I do. But you also might be listening to it and not connecting, not relating to it, because a lot of the times when you are fawning, it actually doesn't feel like self-abandonment. It feels like you're just doing what's expected of you. It feels like you're being a good or a reasonable person. It feels like you're being the good colleague, the one that's easy to work with, because fawning can really hide in plain sight in a way. Like it can show up as you being a caring, competent, empathic, successful person. Because the reality is most of the people who have a fawn response are really successful and people like them and they have the shiny lives on the outside, even if it doesn't necessarily feel good on the inside. But remember, if you're truly fawning, you might not really be in touch with how it feels on the inside. And fawning behavior is often really rewarded by family systems we're in, by the workplaces we're in, by our partners, because other people benefit from you fawning. But when you start to notice that you're doing it, even if you don't have a name for it, it brings up resentment, it brings up exhaustion, it makes you feel like you've lost touch with who you are. Because the lived experience of fawning is you are shape-shifting, you're being who you need to be to whoever it is that you're in relationship with. Your voice might change. Like I notice when I fawn, my voice sounds a lot more childlike, or it sounds a lot higher than when I'm feeling safe and comfortable and in my own skin. If you're fawning, you're never going to feel like you're one up to someone or bigger than them. You're going to either feel like you're trying to make yourself small and less threatening to them, or you're trying to make yourself look really great. Look how smart I am. Look how helpful I am. And you're doing this through overcommitting, through being perfectionistic about everything you put out into the world, through caretaking other people while ignoring your own feelings. One of the things that is so sad to me about fawning, when you have needed to seek safety by maintaining connection at all costs, and you have become hypervigilant to what's going on around you, you stop being connected to yourself. And you do that enough times, and it just ingrains in you that you're not worth considering. Your self-worth just gets chipped away at over and over and over again over the years. So it becomes hard to even see that you have value, to see that someone would even want to consider you. So fawning isn't necessarily always happening in situations where you feel really threatened. It can just be such a default setting for you that it happens all the time in seemingly innocuous, silly situations. Like if your spouse says they really want to go to this one particular Mexican restaurant in town for dinner, and you hate that place, you've never had a good meal there, and you don't like it at all, and you say, "Sure, I'd love to go there," right? Because it's just default. I recently noticed a way that I fawn that I didn't recognize as fawning until it happened again a couple weeks ago when I was at the airport with Mr. Moon. So this is an example of a way that I fawn, despite the fact that I feel 100% safe and seen by my husband. But we're in the airport and we walked by a bathroom and we were on our way to security check-in where I couldn't see it yet. I didn't know how long the line was going to be, if we were going to just breeze through there or if it was going to be an hour wait. So we're walking by this bathroom and I have this moment where I'm like, oh, do I need to go? I don't really need to, but if we're going to be in the line for an hour, I should probably go. This is all happening in an instant in my head. And instead of saying to Mr. Moon, hey, wait, I'm actually going to go to the bathroom right now. Or even, hey, wait, I see the bathroom. Give me a minute to check in with my body and see if I actually need to go. So instead of doing either of those things, I will say to Mr. Moon, hey, do you need to go to the bathroom? And listener, I will tell you, he hates when I do this. He absolutely hates when I do this. Of course he does, because it feels like I'm infantilizing him. It's like he says when I say this to him, it makes him feel like I'm saying, do you need to go potty? And I totally get why he feels that way. And it didn't dawn on me until it happened the last time. And not only did I see that look on his face, like, what the fuck are you asking me if I have to go to the bathroom for? But I also felt inside in that moment, I felt gross. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was asking for permission to exist. And I was able in that moment to go, oh, I know what I'm doing. This is this default part in me that is so used to not feeling like I get to consider my needs if there's someone else around. If I had been alone walking through the airport and seen the bathroom, I probably would have stopped, stood there and like felt for a moment for my bladder and been like, is it full enough that I want to go? Yeah or no. But as soon as there's someone else in the equation, even someone who I love and feel safe with and who I know would oblige happily to wait while I go pee, I still feel like I have to, quote unquote, get permission by asking if he needs to go to the bathroom and then I can. Is this making sense? Is this landing for you? How irrational and silly it can feel to fawn. But I'm sharing this with you because I want you to really get a sense how deeply embedded this stress response can be in your body, how physiological it is. It's not a choice you're making. And it is very much linked to a loss of an internal guidance system. It's very much linked to you losing trust in yourself. It's very much linked to you not having the sense that you get to take up space, have preferences, have feelings, maybe even on an existential level, not even feel like you get to exist. That heartbreak of choosing safety over your truth over and over again. And if you're in that camp, I hope that learning a little bit more about fawn stress response helps you understand why, and that it brings together in your mind why, hey, wait, is a tool for reclaiming yourself. Right? For me, in that moment, as I'm walking through the airport and see the bathroom, it's like, hey, wait, let me check in with myself before we go any further and see if I need to go pee. Right? Oh my gosh, such a innocuous little moment, but such huge implications in your body if you're able to get yourself in that situation as an equal. It's a moment of orienting back to yourself so that you have the capacity to be yourself, to be connected to yourself and connected to another person. So there's a whole lot more that I could go into about the fawn response. honestly, I could talk to you about it for hours. And I'm going to stop here because honestly, there is a guest that I would love to have on this season to talk with you more about it. And that is Dr. Ingrid Clayton. She wrote a phenomenal book that was published last year called Fawning, and it's all about the fawn stress response. And she did such a great job of presenting it in a way where it's about personal stories from her life and the personal stories of her clients. So you really can see yourself in it. And if you're suspecting that you're a fawner, I highly recommend you get the book. It's one of those books that you're gonna read and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I'm underlying every freaking page because you're really gonna be able to see yourself in this. And so I'm hoping that Dr. Ingrid Clayton will be a guest. I have reached out to her a couple times. I haven't heard back. So if any of you out there listening have an in with Dr. Clayton, let me know, and I would love an introduction. And if I'm not able to have her on, I will keep doing solo episodes where we talk more about fawning. Because from what I know about you, one of the reasons that you dig the show is because you have fawning in your repertoire of stress responses, and it is impacting the way that you're living your life and the way that you feel when you're at work and with your spouse and with your kids and with your neighbors, and you don't want to feel that way anymore. So, my intention for the rest of the season is to bring on guests that, even if they're not speaking specifically about fawning, they're speaking in a way that if you are a fawner, you will relate to. They'll have tips and tools and stories for you that you can use in your daily life. And be in service to you unfawning, which is the term that Dr. Ingrid Clayton came up for healing the fawn response. And what's really cool is that last year when I was reading Fawning, the whole second half of the book talks about what you need to do in order to unfawn or learn how to not keep fawning. And every single step by step, was exactly the curriculum that I had developed a few years ago in the course I made called Yours Truly. So if you don't know about it, I have created an online DIY course that will help you step by step learn how to get out of fawning as your default and to have connections with other people where you're still connected to yourself. And the first part of the curriculum is nervous system regulation. It's understanding what are your triggers, what are your stress responses, what does that look like and feel like, and then what are the resources that actually help you find regulation. So you're no longer needing to manipulate or control or manage the situation around you so that you can feel calm. You actually get to do that from the inside out. The second part of the curriculum is about growing your embodiment and your ability to be internally oriented, which is to say, not being up in your head, overthinking all the time, because I know you do that, because that's what us fawners do, and not being that kind of vapory, undefined, I'm just going to be whoever you need me to be in this instance. Being able to be a solid self where you know how you feel and you can stay with yourself in your feelings. And so the next piece that goes along with that in the Yours Truly curriculum is reparenting work, which is to say, learning how to be the unconditionally loving, warm presence that you may not have gotten from your caregivers growing up. Because time and time again, the thing that I find that is true with the people that I work with and the people that this work really helps is that you know how to be so loving and so present and so empathic to everyone else around you, but you can't do it for yourself. So learning that piece. And then that goes along with learning what the different parts of you are. So doing parts work, understanding what I call your strategic parts, the parts of you who came online a long time ago to try and create a sense of safety for you. So the people pleasing part or the overachieving part or the party girl part of you who just wants to drink alcohol and numb it. all these different parts that at some point really served a purpose in terms of helping you survive whatever situation you were in growing up, but now no longer serve you. They're getting in the way, they're tripping you up. So understanding what these parts are and how to get them to stop running the show so that your true self can be the one who shows up. And then finally, learning relational skills like setting boundaries and speaking from your own experience in a conversation. So, like learning the language that you would speak if you actually felt like you got to matter and that you actually honored your own self-worth. Because if you have been in the default of being dysregulated and in fight, flee, or fawn mode, the native language of any of those stress responses is very different than the language you would speak when you're regulated and embodying your worth and knowing how to be loving to someone else at the same time that you're loving to yourself. So these are all skills that are learnable. These are not about changing your personality. They're about understanding what the conditioning was that you got, what the set of skills you were handed were and why they don't work for you anymore, and then a new healthy set of skills. And if you read Fawning, Dr. Ingrid Clayton's book, she says that these are all the ways that you heal fawning, but she doesn't actually go into how to do it. Yours truly does go into how to do that. So if you're interested in learning more about the course, you can go to my website, which is jmoonfields.com/yours dash truly. I'll put it in the show notes so you can easily click on it. If the course really speaks to you, you can use the code HeyWait-100 to get $100 off, which means it will be only $148 US for the course. And I'm telling you, it is worth 6 months worth of good coaching or therapy. So you can learn more about it at jmoonfields.com/yours-truly and use the code HeyWait-100 to get $100 off. And I will, like I said, put that in the show notes for you. So before we wrap up today, then, I want to go back to the first step of learning to unfawn, which is embodiment and orienting towards yourself. And I want to invite you with me right now to put one hand on your forehead and one hand at the base of your skull. Now, if you're driving, obviously you can't do this, but you could imagine doing it. If you are able to do it with me, though, I want you to feel the pressure that is at your forehead and at the base of your skull. So your own hands are holding your prefrontal cortex, that's underneath your forehead, and your brainstem, which is at the base of your skull. So your prefrontal cortex is the part of you that makes you uniquely human. It's the newest part of your brain. It's the part of you that has reason and creativity and empathy and can see possibilities and hope and connect with other people. Your brainstem is the reptilian part of your brain, where all the stress responses that we've talked about, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, come from. So I want you to just feel, and you can close your eyes if it feels good to you. See if you can tune into the feeling of holding both of these parts of you. One is not better than the other. They are both very, very much needed. It's just that you might not want your brainstem to be so in the forefront of your relationships. But noticing as you're holding both these parts of you, the temperature of your hands, maybe noticing as you bring your attention to the pressure of your hands that you get a deeper breath or a sigh. And maybe taking this opportunity to say, this is me, I'm here. And notice what that feels like in your body. And then actually take the hand that's on your forehead and bring it down to your heart now, or to your chest. So now you're holding your brainstem in one hand, that part of you that just really wants to keep you safe, and you're holding your heart in the other hand, that part of you that so longs for connection and wants to know what it feels like to reliably feel safety and connection at the same time. And maybe reflecting in this moment other times where you have had that, where you have felt safe and connected with a person or with a pet, and what that's like in your whole system, how it softens you or warms you, brings you peace. And then take the hand that was on your brainstem and bring it down to your belly. So now you have one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. See if you can soften your shoulders, soften your throat and your jaw. Notice what it feels like here to connect to your gut knowing, your intuition. As you're at the end of this podcast and this time that you've created to learn more about yourself and to connect to yourself, see if there's anything in this moment you need. So this is your opportunity to say, hey, wait, how am I right now? And what do I need? And my encouragement to you, dear listener, is that you do your best to respond to whatever the request is that's coming from your body, whether that's to go get a drink of water, go take a walk, or maybe it's a more significant knowing of like, I really need to have this conversation with that person. Whatever the knowing is that you feel as you connect to yourself, take a moment to acknowledge what it is, to feel your feet on the floor, to feel your hands making contact with the solidity of you and the essence and energy of you, so you can go into whatever is next for you with a sense of connection to yourself. Thank you so much, listener, for being here today. I hope something resonated with you and helps you to have a good experience of yourself in your life and your relationships, because you really do deserve that. And if someone came to mind while you were listening today, could you take a moment and share this episode with them right now? And if you haven't had a chance to yet, please leave a review for Hey Wait, because both of those things help new people find the show. And it means a lot to me to be able to reach and connect with new people around this work. With that, if you have an idea for a guest or a topic, or you have a question for me, feel free to reach out to me at Hey Wait with Jay on Instagram. Hey Wait is produced by Viv at First Click VA, and the original music is by Dalton Grant. And hey wait, before we go, I want you to remember, your insights matter, and the right people will meet you there. So stay with yourself, and I'll see you next time.